The train whistle pierced the autumn air as Emily Hargrove clutched her letter, tears blurring the ink that had changed her life forever. The steam billowed around the platform, like ghostly fingers, pulling her toward a future she could scarcely imagine. All around her, Boston's South Station hummed with life, gentlemen in finely pressed suits, ladies with parasols, and porters rushing with trunks. But Emily stood frozen, paralyzed between the world she knew and the one calling to her across a continent. Final boarding for Chicago, connecting to Cheyenne and points west. The conductor called, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Emily smoothed her navy traveling dress, the finest she owned yet still modest by Boston standards, and gathered her courage along with her small carpet bag. She was 26, an old maid by society's cruel measure, with nothing but teaching credentials, 5 years' savings, and a promise from a man she'd never met. Mr. Jackson Blackwood, rancher, Silver Creek, Wyoming Territory. His letters had arrived like clockwork for 6 months, after he'd responded to her advertisement in the Matrimonial Times. His penmanship was rough, but his words were thoughtful, speaking of vast skies and mountain air, of building something lasting in a place where the past didn't matter. He'd sent a train ticket, an act of faith she now returned by stepping aboard the westbound train. "You'll die out there," her sister Margaret had warned, face pinched with disapproval. Or worse, perhaps she would. But staying meant certain death of another kind, the slow suffocation of spirit, trapped in her brother-in-law's home as the spinster aunt, watching life pass by from behind lace curtains. As the train lurched forward, Emily pressed her face to the window, watching Boston, the only home she'd ever known, recede into the distance. She withdrew the daguerreotype from her reticule, studying the face of the stranger, who would be her husband. Jackson Blackwood's eyes held a certain intensity beneath the brim of his hat, his jaw set with determination, shoulders broad beneath a simple shirt, not handsome in the classical sense, but strong, dependable, or so she prayed. She tucked the image away and opened his last letter, rereading words she'd memorized weeks ago. Miss Hargrove. The aspen leaves are turning gold on the mountains. By the time you arrive, the first snow will dust the peaks. I've added a room to the cabin and planted apple trees that may bear fruit by next autumn. Silver Creek has a small school that needs a teacher with your qualifications. I can offer simple comforts, honest work, and the promise that you'll never want for anything I can provide. I await your arrival at Clearwater Station on October 15th. Look for the man with the copper bay horse. Respectfully. Yours, Jackson Blackwood. 7 days of rattling travel stretched before her. 7 days to wonder if she'd made the greatest mistake of her life, or its saving grace. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the rhythm of the train carrying her westward, into the unknown, into her future. The journey west transformed before Emily's eyes like scenes from a magic lantern show. Chicago's crowds and clamor gave way to endless prairies, then to rolling hills dotted with stunted trees, and finally to the distant silhouettes of mountains, jagged teeth against the horizon, growing larger with each passing day. The train had thinned of passengers since Denver, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts in the hard-backed seat, save for a traveling salesman dozing across the aisle, and an elderly couple speaking in hushed German near the front of the car. When the conductor announced Clearwater Station, 15 minutes, Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. She pinched color into her pale cheeks and straightened her hat, conscious of the dust and wrinkles that 7 days of travel had worked into her appearance. The train slowed with a screech of metal on metal, and Clearwater Station emerged from the golden afternoon light, little more than a wooden platform, a water tower, and a clapboard building with peeling paint. Beyond it, a cluster of buildings comprised what passed for a town, a general store, a saloon, what might be a hotel, and scattered houses fading into the vastness of the Wyoming Territory. Emily gathered her belongings with trembling hands. This wasn't Boston, with its cobblestone streets and gaslights, its libraries and concert halls. This was the edge of civilization. The conductor helped her down the steps, her boots touching Wyoming soil for the first time. The air smelled different here, crisp and tinged with sage, absent the coal smoke and sewage that permeated eastern cities. "Miss," the conductor handed down her trunk. "This is all yours." Emily nodded, scanning the small gathering of people at the station. Several cowboys lounged against a hitching post, watching with idle curiosity. A woman herded 3 small children toward a waiting wagon, but there was no sign of a man with a copper bay horse. "You being met, ma'am?" the conductor asked, concern creasing his weathered face. "Yes, Emily began, but the words died on her lips as a young woman in a calico dress approached, her expression grave beneath a sun-faded bonnet. "You must be Miss Hargrove," the woman said, extending a call-used hand. "I'm Sarah Miller. My husband runs the general store." Emily shook her hand, confusion mounting. "Yes, I'm Emily Hargrove. I'm to meet Mr. Blackwood." Something flashed in Sarah's eyes, pity perhaps, or warning. "Jack won't be coming, Miss Hargrove. Perhaps we should speak at the store, away from." She glanced meaningfully at the cowboys, who had fallen silent, watching the exchange with newfound interest. Dread pooled in Emily's stomach. "Has something happened to Mr. Blackwood?" Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not safe to speak of him here. Please come with me." With no alternative, Emily followed Sarah to a nearby wagon, her trunk loaded by a station porter who pointedly avoided her gaze. As they pulled away from the station, Emily noticed wanted posters tacked to the station wall, the wind ruffling their corners. She couldn't read the names from this distance, but the sinking feeling in her chest told her what she would find there. The general store sat at the town center, Miller's Dry Goods painted in fading letters across its facade. Sarah led Emily through the shop, past shelves stocked with calico, coffee beans, ammunition, and patent medicines, to a back room furnished simply with a pine table and chairs. "My husband will watch the store," Sarah said, pouring coffee into a tin cup. "Drink this. You look half frozen." Emily accepted the cup, wrapping her fingers around its warmth. "Mrs. Miller, please, what's happened to Mr. Blackwood?" Sarah sank into a chair opposite Emily, her face troubled. "Jack Blackwood is wanted for murder, Miss Hargrove. Sheriff Wallace has a posse out searching the high country for him right now." The coffee cup clattered against the table as Emily's hand jerked in shock. "Murder? There must be some mistake. 3 weeks ago, Thomas Eaton, the banker who holds notes on half the ranches in the territory, was shot dead in his office. Jack was seen leaving just before, arguing about his land. The strongbox was empty." Sarah's voice was gentle, but her words fell like hammer blows. "There's a $1,000 bounty on his head." Emily's mind raced, trying to reconcile the thoughtful man from the letters with this news. "I don't believe it," she whispered. "His letters, he's not a violent man. Jack's always been quiet, keeps to himself since he came here 3 years back. Built that ranch from nothing." Sarah hesitated. "Some say he has secrets, a past back east, don't we all?" Emily countered, a spark of defiance cutting through her shock. Sarah studied her with newfound respect. "Miss Hargrove, I don't mean to be forward, but you have no prospects here now. The stagecoach returns east tomorrow morning. My husband and I would be happy to advance you the fare. No." The firmness in Emily's voice surprised even her. "I've come too far to turn back at the first difficulty. I must speak with Mr. Blackwood. He's being hunted, Miss Hargrove. By the law and by bounty hunters, worse than any outlaw." Sarah leaned forward, lowering her voice. "And Randall Eaton, Thomas's son, has taken over the bank. He's not a man to cross. Nevertheless, I intend to hear Mr. Blackwood's side of this story." Emily straightened her spine, summoning the resolve that had carried her across a continent. "I'll need directions to his ranch." Sarah's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I assure you, Mrs. Miller, I've never been more serious in my life." Emily set down her cup with finality. "Now will you help me, or must I find my own way?" Sarah's expression shifted between disbelief and reluctant admiration. Finally, she sighed. "You're either the bravest or the most foolish woman I've ever met, Emily Hargrove." "I'm not certain which. Perhaps a measure of both," Emily conceded, with a small smile. "But I've come to Wyoming to begin a new life, and I intend to do exactly that, with or without Mr. Blackwood." What neither woman could know, as Sarah begrudgingly sketched a crude map to Silver Creek Ranch, was that their conversation had not gone unheard. Outside the thin walls of the storeroom, a man in a dusty black coat slipped away, mounting a horse tied outside the general store. He rode hard toward the bank, where Randall Eaton would pay handsomely for news that Jackson Blackwood's mail-order bride had arrived. Exactly as they'd anticipated. The hired wagon crested the final hill, just as twilight painted the western sky in strokes of crimson and gold. Emily gasped at the vista spread before her, a valley cradled by distant mountains, bisected by a creek that glinted like molten silver in the fading light. Nestled against a stand of aspens, half hidden from the main trail, stood a cabin with a small barn and corral behind it. Silver Creek Ranch, the driver announced, breaking his stoic silence for the first time since they'd left town 2 hours earlier. Though some folks call it fool's dream, it's beautiful, Emily murmured, drinking in the peaceful scene, so at odds with the violent allegations against its owner. The driver, a leathery old man named Hank, whom Sarah Miller had reluctantly arranged to transport Emily, snorted. Pretty land don't feed cattle when winter comes harsh. Blackwood picked this spot for its beauty, not its sense. Banker Eaton told him so, time and again. Emily studied the homestead as they approached. It was modest but well tended. The cabin constructed of solid logs with a stone chimney, the split rail fence around the vegetable garden standing straight and true. A single lantern glowed in the window, its light a beacon in the gathering dusk. Someone's home, she observed, heart quickening. Ain't Blackwood, Hank said grimly. He'd be a fool to come back here with a price on his head. He pulled the wagon to a stop 50 yards from the cabin. This is far as I go, ma'am. Don't want no part of whatever happens next. Emily climbed down, retrieving her carpet bag while Hank unceremoniously deposited her trunk in the dirt. She pressed coins into his palm. Thank you for bringing me. Hank pocketed the money with a grunt. Mrs. Miller said to tell you the offer of a ticket east still stands. Stage leaves at noon tomorrow, if you change your mind. With that he turned the wagon and headed back toward the trail, leaving Emily alone in the deepening twilight. Drawing a steadying breath, she approached the cabin, acutely aware of the silence broken only by crickets and the distant gurgle of the creek. 5 steps from the door, it swung open. Emily froze. Silhouetted against the warm light stood a woman, slender, straight-backed with a shotgun braced against her shoulder, aimed directly at Emily's chest. That's far enough, the woman said, her voice steady. State your business. Emily raised her hands slowly. I'm Emily Hargrove. I've come from Boston too, she faltered, the rehearsed explanation suddenly inadequate. To meet Jackson Blackwood. The shotgun lowered a fraction. Jack's mail-order bride. Disbelief colored the woman's tone. Yes, Emily confirmed, lowering her hands cautiously. And you are Catherine Blackwood, Jack's sister. The woman lowered the shotgun completely, stepping into the fading light. She was perhaps 30, with the same intense eyes as her brother, though her features were finer, her dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. You're either very brave or very foolish to come here now, Miss Hargrove. So I've been told, Emily replied, a hint of weariness creeping into her voice. May I come in? It's been a long journey. Catherine regarded her for a long moment before nodding once, sharp and decisive. Come in. But know this, if you're working with Randall Eaton or the sheriff, you won't leave this valley alive. The threat hung between them as Emily followed Catherine into the cabin, a single room with a curtained-off sleeping area, sparsely furnished, but meticulously clean. A pot of stew bubbled on the cast-iron stove, the aroma making Emily's stomach clench with hunger. Sit, Catherine directed, gesturing to the table while keeping the shotgun within reach. You must have questions. Emily sank onto a bench, the exhaustion of travel finally catching up to her. They say your brother murdered Thomas Eaton. They're wrong. Catherine ladled stew into a bowl, sliding it across to Emily along with a hunk of cornbread. Eat. You look half-starved. Emily hesitated only a moment before taking a spoonful. The simple fare tasted better than any meal she could remember. In town they say he was seen arguing with Mr. Eaton that money was stolen. Jack argued with Eaton because Eaton was trying to swindle him out of this land. The money missing from that strong box was Jack's life savings payment for a loan Eaton claimed never to have received. Catherine's hands clenched into fists on the tabletop. My brother is many things, Miss Hargrove, but he is not a thief or a murderer. Where is he now? Emily asked. Safe. That's all you need to know. Catherine's gaze was unflinching. Why did you come here instead of returning east when you heard the news? Emily considered the question, searching for an answer beyond the instinct that had driven her. His letters, she said finally. I came to know a man through those pages. Honorable, hard-working, perhaps lonely but never desperate. That man wouldn't kill for money. A complicated emotion crossed Catherine's face, surprise perhaps or reluctant approval. You read well between the lines, Miss Hargrove. Emily, please. She paused, gathering courage. I'd like to meet him, to hear his side of this story. Catherine shook her head. Impossible. The hills are crawling with bounty hunters. Randall Eaton has offered a reward above what the law posted. Because he knows your brother is innocent, Emily pressed. Because he wants this land. Catherine rose, moving to a trunk in the corner. She withdrew a sheaf of papers, spreading them on the table. Silver Creek sits on the only year-round water source in the valley. Whoever controls it controls all the surrounding ranches. Jack refused to sell, so Eaton found another way to take it. Emily studied the documents, surveys, water rights, a deed bearing Jackson Blackwood's careful signature. Another piece of paper caught her eye, a bank draft for $500 with Thomas Eaton's signature acknowledging receipt. This proves the loan was repaid. It would if Eaton hadn't been killed before depositing it, and if the bank's copy hadn't mysteriously disappeared. Catherine's smile was bitter. Convenient, isn't it? Understanding dawned. They framed him. Randall Eaton has wanted this valley since he returned from back east with his fancy business ideas. Now with his father dead, there's nothing to stop him from taking everything. Catherine gathered the papers, returning them to the trunk. Nothing except Jack's stubbornness and my shotgun. Emily's mind raced, her teacher's logic assembling the pieces. If we could find proof, Catherine interrupted, eyebrow raised. Miss Hargrove, Emily, you arrived mere hours ago. This isn't your fight. I came to marry your brother and share his life. Emily countered, surprising herself with her vehemence. That makes it very much my fight. Before Catherine could respond, the sound of approaching hooves shattered the evening quiet. She snatched up the shotgun, dousing the lantern with one swift movement, into the root cellar. Now, Emily barely had time to register the trapdoor in the floor before Catherine was hustling her toward it. What about you? I'll handle this. Go. Catherine lifted the door, revealing a small space dug into the earth beneath the cabin. Heart pounding, Emily descended the crude ladder into darkness that smelled of earth and stored vegetables. Above, she heard Catherine slide a rug over the trapdoor before the cabin door opened. Evening, Miss Blackwood. A man's voice, smooth as silk but cold as winter. I hope I'm not interrupting your supper. Mr. Eaton. Catherine's voice betrayed nothing.
What brings the new bank president to my humble home at this hour?
Emily pressed her ear to the trapdoor, straining to hear the conversation above. Courtesy, Miss Blackwood. I thought you should know that your brother's mail-order bride arrived on today's train. Randall Eaton's voice oozed false concern. Poor woman came all this way only to discover she's pledged to marry a murderer. I've offered to assist her return east. How charitable of you. Catherine's tone could have frozen the creek solid. I've also come with an offer. The bank will be foreclosing on this property, given the unfortunate circumstances. However, I'm prepared to purchase your brother's water rights directly, enough money for you both to start fresh elsewhere, perhaps California.
This land isn't for sale, Mr. Eaton.
I wonder if you'll maintain it when they drag your brother back here to hang. Footsteps crossed the wooden floor. Oh, and one more thing. If you happen to see this Miss Hargrove before she returns east, do give her my regards. The door closed, followed by receding hoofbeats. Only when silence had fallen again did Catherine lift the trapdoor. Emily climbed out, brushing dirt from her skirts, her mind whirling with implications. He knows I'm here. Someone in town talked. Catherine peered through a crack in the shutters, ensuring Eaton had truly departed. You're not safe here now. Neither are you, Emily countered. How long before he returns with men to force you out? Catherine's face hardened with resolve. Long enough to get word to Jack. She crossed to the fireplace, extracting a loose brick to reveal a small hollow. From it she withdrew a folded paper. I need to get this to him. Proof that Randall was embezzling from the bank, using his father's reputation as cover. Jack was gathering evidence when Thomas Eaton was killed. Emily extended her hand. Let me take it. Catherine stared at her. You can't be serious. No one knows me here. I'm just a confused Eastern woman looking for her fiancé. Emily met Catherine's gaze steadily. They won't suspect me. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than staying here waiting for Randall Eaton to return. Emily challenged. Tell me where to find your brother. I'll deliver your message and the proof. For a long moment, Catherine seemed to weigh her options against her instincts. Finally, she nodded once. Decision made. There's a line shack in the high meadow, where the north fork of the creek begins. Jack uses it during calving season. She hesitated. It's a hard ride, even for experienced riders. Then we'd best leave at first light, Emily said with more confidence than she felt. And you'll need to teach me to shoot that shotgun before we go. Catherine's laugh held equal parts, disbelief and admiration. Jack said you were a school teacher. I am, Emily confirmed, lifting her chin. But I believe in being a quick study, especially when lives depend on it. Outside, an owl called into the night, 3 times, then silence. Catherine cocked her head, listening. A slow smile spread across her face. We may not need to find Jack after all, she said softly. He's found us. The knock came just before midnight. 3 soft raps followed by 2 harder ones. Catherine was at the door instantly, shotgun ready as she cracked it open, then lowered the weapon with visible relief. You fool, she hissed to the figure who slipped inside. The valley's crawling with Eaton's men. Had to risk it. Word came about. Jackson Blackwood stopped short, his gaze landing on Emily, who had risen from her seat by the dying fire. For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended, as they regarded one another across the cabin's small expanse. He was taller than his daguerreotype suggested, his frame lean and hardened by frontier life. Trail dust coated his clothes, and several days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw, but it was his eyes that captured Emily's attention. The same intense gaze from the photograph, now weary and exhausted, but still burning with purpose. Miss Hargrove, he said finally, his voice a rough baritone. You shouldn't have come. So I've been repeatedly informed, Mr. Blackwood. Emily managed to keep her voice steady, despite the storm of emotions churning within her. Relief that he was alive, uncertainty about the man himself, and an unexpected flutter of awareness that no photograph could have prepared her for. Yet here I stand. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Stubborn, Catherine said you would be. He turned to his sister. Eden knows she's here. Came by himself not 2 hours ago. Catherine bolted the door, offering to buy water rights and suggesting we relocate to California. Generous, Jackson said dryly, shrugging off his duster to reveal a holstered revolver at his hip. Emily couldn't help noticing the dark stain on his left sleeve. You're wounded, she said, moving toward him instinctively. It's nothing. Caught a bullet grazed 2 days ago from an ambitious bounty hunter. He flexed his arm as if to demonstrate it. Still worked, though a flicker of pain crossed his face. Found him following Eaton from the bank to the telegraph office. They're bringing in professional manhunters from Denver. Catherine motioned him to a chair. Sit. Let Emily look at that arm while I tell you what we've learned. To Emily's surprise, Jackson complied without argument, watching with guarded curiosity as she gathered cloth and the medical supplies Catherine indicated on a shelf. His silence continued as she gently rolled up his sleeve, revealing an angry furrow across his bicep, red and beginning to fester. This needs proper cleaning, Emily murmured, reaching for the whiskey bottle Catherine had placed beside her. It will hurt. I imagine you have questions, Miss Hargrove, Jackson said, his eyes never leaving her face as she worked, about whether you've pledged yourself to a murderer. Emily met his gaze directly. I do have questions, Mr. Blackwood, but not about your guilt. I've read enough of your letters to know your character. Catherine has explained the situation with the Eatons and your land. Surprise flickered across his features. Yet you're still here. Yes. She soaked a cloth in whiskey. This will sting. Without further warning, she pressed it to the wound. Jackson's jaw tightened, but he made no sound. Most women would have taken the first stage east. I am not most women, Mr. Blackwood. Emily continued, cleaning the wound with methodical care. I left everything I knew because your letters spoke of building something meaningful here. I don't abandon commitments lightly, even to a wanted man. His voice had softened, tinged with something like wonder. especially to a falsely accused one. Emily began wrapping clean bandages around his arm. Though I should warn you that I have every intention of clearing your name before consenting to marry you. I have no desire to be a fugitive's wife. A surprised laugh escaped him, rusty, as if long unused. You're nothing like I imagined, Emily Hargrove. Nor you, Jackson Blackwood, she countered, tying off the bandage. Though I admit I expected more frequent bathing. This time his laugh was fuller, drawing an answering smile from Catherine, who had been watching their exchange with undisguised interest. If you two are finished getting acquainted, she interjected, spreading papers on the table, we have plans to make. Jack, Emily knows about the embezzlement evidence. Sobering instantly, Jackson joined his sister at the table, examining the documents. It's not enough. We need the ledger Randall keeps in the bank safe, the one showing where the missing money really went. Randall keeps the only key on him at all times, Catherine added. And since Thomas's murder, he's installed an armed guard at night. Emily finished putting away the medical supplies, her mind working. What if someone with a legitimate reason to access the bank could get inside? Both Blackwoods turned to her. I am after all a respectable woman newly arrived from Boston, Emily continued, warming to her idea, concerned about securing my savings after learning of my fiancé's legal troubles. Jackson shook his head. Too dangerous. Randall's seen your valise in town by now. He knows you came here, which is precisely why he'll believe I've had second thoughts, Emily countered. If Catherine spreads word tomorrow that I was horrified to learn of your situation and wish to return east immediately, she turned to Catherine. You said the stage leaves at noon. Understanding dawned in Catherine's eyes. Plenty of time for a nervous woman to visit the bank first, ensuring she has sufficient funds for the journey home. Absolutely not, Jackson stated flatly. I didn't bring you across the country to put you in danger. You didn't bring me, Mr. Blackwood, Emily replied, her voice gentle but firm. I came of my own accord, and I will help of my own accord as well. Before he could object further, Catherine cut in. Jack, she's right. No one will suspect her. Randall's too arrogant to imagine a woman might outwit him. Brother and sister locked gazes in silent communication, years of shared hardships and understanding passing between them. Finally, Jackson exhaled slowly. If we consider this madness, he said carefully, how would you even know what to look for, or where? Emily smiled. I was a school teacher, Mr. Blackwood. Before that, I assisted my father in his accounting practice for 5 years. I know ledgers, and I know how men like Randall Eaton hide their dishonesty between the lines. For the first time since entering the cabin, Jackson Blackwood truly looked at the woman he'd sent for, not as an Eastern curiosity or an unexpected complication, but as a partner with her own strengths and courage. Something shifted in his expression. You'll need to be convincing, he said finally. Eaton's no fool, for all his arrogance. I'll assist with that, Catherine offered, a gleam in her eye. By morning, she'll look every inch the frightened city woman desperate to escape the scandal of her outlaw fiancé. Emily nodded, her resolve strengthening. And when I've found the evidence, I have a friend at the Territorial Marshal's office in Chican, Jackson said. A telegram with the right information would bring him here within 2 days. Then it's settled, Catherine declared, leaving no room for further debate. We have until dawn to prepare. Jack, you need to be gone before first light, back to the line shack. If Eaton suspects anything, this is the first place he'll look. As Catherine busied herself gathering supplies, Jackson drew Emily aside, his expression troubled. This isn't what I promised you, he said quietly. When I wrote about a new life here, I meant peace, security, adventure, Emily finished for him. The chance to build something meaningful, to matter. She smiled wryly. You've certainly delivered on those accounts, Mr. Blackwood. He studied her face, searching for regret or accusation, and finding neither. When this is over, if we succeed, he began. When we succeed, Emily corrected. A smile touched his lips, genuine and warming his entire face. When we succeed, I'll court you properly. No hasty wedding between strangers. I'd like that, Emily admitted, surprising herself with the truth of it. Somewhere between Boston and this moment, her practical arrangement had transformed into something else entirely, something with roots that reached deeper than convenience or escape. Jackson hesitated, then reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture tentative but tender. Be careful tomorrow, Emily Hargrove. I find I've grown quite attached to the idea of showing you those mountain sunrises I wrote about. I shall be the very model of Eastern caution, she promised, her heartbeat quickening at his touch. While employing a thoroughly Western resourcefulness, outside, a coyote called into the night, a lonesome sound that seemed to echo the precarious hope building within the cabin's walls. By morning, they would each face their separate dangers. But for now, in this moment, three unlikely allies bent their heads together over the table, plotting to reclaim a future that had seemed lost only hours before. Clearwater's main street shimmered in the late morning heat as Emily stepped down from the miller's wagon, her appearance transformed overnight. Gone was the travel-worn woman in a practical navy dress. In her place stood a picture of Eastern gentility in a high-necked blouse and tailored skirt borrowed from Catherine's trunk, remnants of her life before Wyoming. "Remember," Sarah Miller murmured, handing down a beaded reticule that concealed a small derringer. "If anything seems wrong, walk out immediately. The noon stage can always be caught tomorrow." Emily nodded, patting the hidden pocket in her skirt, where the carefully folded documents from Catherine rested. "Thank you for your help, Mrs. Miller. Sarah, please." The storekeeper's wife squeezed her hand. "Good luck." Clearwater First National Bank occupied the most impressive building in town, a two-story structure of red brick with actual glass windows and ornate woodwork around the door. A sharp contrast to the weather-beaten wood of surrounding establishments, it stood as a monument to Eastern capital imposed upon Western landscape. Emily climbed the steps with practiced poise, channeling every society matron she'd ever observed in Boston. Inside, polished counters and brass fixtures created an atmosphere of solidity and permanence. Two tellers served customers, while a young guard stood at attention near a large safe visible through an open office door. Taking a steadying breath, Emily approached the nearest teller, a thin man with ink-stained fingers and spectacles perched on a narrow nose. "Good morning," she began, infusing her voice with cultured Beacon Hill inflections. "I wish to speak with Mr. Eaton regarding my accounts." The teller glanced up, recognition flickering in his eyes. Word traveled fast in small towns. "Of course, Miss Hargrove. One moment, please." As he disappeared into the back office, Emily surveyed the bank interior, memorizing its layout. The safe dominated the rear office, its heavy door currently open to allow the day's business. A large desk beside it presumably belonged to Randall Eaton, papers neatly arranged across its surface. Most importantly, a leather-bound ledger sat open atop a smaller desk in the corner, exactly where Catherine had said the bank's official records would be kept. "Miss Hargrove." Randall Eaton emerged from the office, hand extended in greeting. "What a pleasure to meet you at last." Emily had expected many things from the man responsible for framing Jackson, but not the polished charm of the figure before her. Randall Eaton was perhaps 35, impeccably dressed in an Eastern-cut suit that seemed at odds with the frontier town. His smile revealed perfect teeth beneath a neatly trimmed mustache, and his eyes, calculating and cold despite their warm brown color, assessed her with undisguised interest. "Mr. Eaton," she accepted his handshake briefly. "I apologize for arriving without appointment. Recent developments have forced me to reconsider my plans." "Of course," he said smoothly, radiating false sympathy. "A terrible shock for you. Please come into my office, where we can speak privately." Emily followed him, acutely aware of the guard's gaze following her movement. The office was opulently furnished with a mahogany desk, leather chairs, and a glass-fronted cabinet displaying expensive liquors, all jarringly out of place in a frontier banking establishment. "Please sit." Eaton gestured to a chair before closing the door. "Sherry, I imported directly from Spain." "No, thank you." Emily arranged her skirts as she sat, affecting the slight nervousness of a woman in distress. "I'm afraid I've had rather a shock, Mr. Eaton. I find myself in need of financial guidance." Eaton took the seat behind his desk, steeping his fingers beneath his chin. "Naturally, a terrible situation. I understand you arrived expecting to marry Jackson Blackwood. A correspondence arranged through a matrimonial advertisement," Emily explained. allowing embarrassment to color her cheeks. I had no idea of his criminal tendencies. Few did. Eaton's expression shifted to one of practiced concern. Blackwood kept to himself. Even my late father, God rest his soul, was taken in by his honest appearance. Right until the end. Emily clutched her reticule tighter, fighting the urge to challenge his lies. I've decided to return east immediately. The afternoon stage, if possible. But I need to ensure my finances are in order first. A wise decision. Eaton nodded approvingly. I assume you have letters of credit from your Boston bank. Yes. Emily withdrew the papers Catherine had prepared. Legitimate bank documents from Emily's own accounts, carefully selected to reveal nothing of importance. I had intended to transfer my savings here, to begin our new life. As Eaton examined the documents, Emily allowed her gaze to drift toward the open safe and the ledger on the smaller desk. Just as Catherine had described, a second, smaller book was visible beside the official ledger, red leather binding with no markings. These appear in order, Eaton said, returning the papers. Given the circumstances, I'd be happy to arrange a draft for the full amount, for your journey home. You're too kind. Emily managed a tremulous smile. I confess, Mr. Eaton, this experience has left me rather shaken. Might I trouble you for a glass of water before we proceed? Of course. Eaton rose smoothly. I'll have my clerk bring some immediately. The moment he stepped through the door, Emily moved. 3 quick steps took her to the smaller desk, where she flipped open the red ledger, fingers flying over the pages. Entries in a tight, controlled hand, documented transactions that appeared nowhere in the official bank records, loans called in prematurely, properties acquired at fractions of their worth, and most damning of all, a record of payments to R. Jenkins on the day Thomas Eaton was murdered. With practiced efficiency, Emily extracted the folded document from her hidden pocket and slipped it between specific pages of the ledger before returning to her seat, heart pounding but outwardly composed. The door opened as Eaton returned with a glass of water. Here you are, Miss Hargrove. Thank you. She accepted it with steady hands. You're very accommodating. We pride ourselves on personal service here, he replied, resuming his seat. Now, about your draft. A commotion in the outer bank interrupted him. Raised voices, then the unmistakable sound of Catherine Blackwood's distinctive accent. I must speak with him immediately. It concerns my brother. Eaton frowned. Excuse me a moment, Miss Hargrove. As he stepped out, Emily took the opportunity to extract the small pencil and paper from her reticule, hastily noting dates and figures from memory. Catherine was creating the diversion they had planned, but every second increased the danger. Through the door she heard Eaton's controlled voice. Miss Blackwood, I understand your concern, but as I've told you repeatedly, he's been spotted near Cottonwood Springs. Catherine's voice carried clearly. The sheriff's men are closing in. I need your guarantee that he'll stand trial properly, not be shot on sight for that reward money you've posted. Emily tucked away her notes as Eaton re-entered, his composed facade showing the first cracks of annoyance. My apologies for the interruption. Blackwood's sister, understandably distraught. Of course. Emily rose, gathering her reticule. Perhaps I should return later. No need. Eaton moved to block her path to the door, his smile no longer reaching his eyes. In fact, I insist you stay a moment longer, Miss Hargrove. You see, I find myself curious about something. Emily's pulse quickened. Sir, a woman travels thousands of miles to marry a man she's never met. Upon arrival, she discovers he's wanted for murder. Most would flee immediately. He studied her face. Yet you spent last night at his ranch. Why, I wonder. The trap was closing. Emily lifted her chin. As you said, Mr. Eaton, I traveled thousands of miles. I simply wished to understand the situation fully before departing. A natural curiosity. Eaton moved closer, all pretense of charm vanishing. And did your curiosity extend to my private office just now, while I was occupied with Miss Blackwood's theatrical entrance? I don't know what you mean. Emily clutched her reticule tighter, feeling the outline of the derringer within. I think you do. His voice hardened. My clerk observed you at my assistant's desk, examining items that don't concern you. Emily backed away, calculating the distance to the door. You're mistaken. I merely wished to see the view from the window. There is no window on that wall, Miss Hargrove. Eaton's hand shot out, gripping her wrist painfully. What did you take? What did Blackwood send you to find? Nothing. Emily twisted in his grasp, panic rising. You're hurting me, Mr. Eaton. A new voice broke the tension. The bank teller, standing wide-eyed in the doorway. Sheriff Wallace is here. Says it's urgent. About Blackwood. Eaton's grip loosened fractionally. His attention divided. It was enough. Emily wrenched free, bringing her knee up sharply in a most unladylike manner that made Eaton double over with a strangled gasp. Without hesitation, she bolted past him, through the outer bank, and into the street. Stop her. Eaton's voice followed, but Emily was already running toward the general store where Catherine would be waiting with horses. The sound of pursuit grew behind her. Boots on wooden boardwalks, shouted orders. A gunshot cracked, splintering wood near her head. Emily darted between buildings, her proper Eastern attire hampering every step. Ahead, she spotted Catherine mounted on a dappled mare, leading a second horse. Salvation, just yards away. Catherine extended her hand as Emily reached her. Quickly, with strength born of desperation, Emily grasped Catherine's arm, allowing herself to be pulled onto the horse. They were galloping out of town before she'd properly settled, Catherine leading them toward the creek that gave Jackson's ranch its name. Did you find it? Catherine shouted over the thundering hooves. Yes, and more. Emily clung to the saddle, every bump threatening to unseat her. Jenkins. Randall paid someone named Jenkins the day his father died. Catherine's expression hardened with grim satisfaction. The Eaton family's dirty secret. Randall's half-brother from the wrong side of the blanket. Does odd jobs, no questions asked. Behind them, riders appeared on the ridge. The sheriff and his deputies with Randall Eaton among them. We'll never outrun them to the line shack, Catherine called, veering suddenly toward a thicket of cottonwoods. We need to split up. You take the mare, to the Indian caves by the North Ridge. Jack will find you there. I'll lead them away. Before Emily could protest, Catherine had slowed just enough for Emily to slide to a precarious position astride the mare. But you, I know these hills better than any of them. Catherine handed her the reins. Keep the ridge to your right. Don't stop for anything. With that, she slapped the mare's flank, sending Emily galloping toward the distant mountains while she turned to face their pursuers. Emily bent low over the horse's neck, tears stinging her eyes as she heard Catherine's rebel yell and gunshots behind her. The mare seemed to sense the urgency, finding its footing on the increasingly rocky terrain as they climbed toward the ridge Catherine had indicated. By nightfall, Emily had reached the caves, a series of shallow depressions in the limestone cliffs where Catherine had said local tribes once sheltered during buffalo hunts. Exhausted and saddle-sore, she tethered the mare in a sheltered hollow and crept into the largest cave. Hours passed with only the distant howl of coyotes for company. Every sound made her reach for the derringer, still miraculously in her reticule. Had Catherine escaped? Was Jackson waiting at the line shack, unaware of their discovery? And what of the evidence she'd gathered? Would it be enough? Just before dawn, the soft crunch of boots on gravel jolted her from a fitful doze. Emily pressed herself against the cave wall, weapon raised. A shadow filled the entrance. Emily, the voice sent relief flooding through her. Jackson. He was beside her in an instant, gathering her into an embrace that spoke of fear and gratitude in equal measure. Thank God. When Catherine reached the line shack alone, Catherine's safe. Emily pulled back to search his face in the dim light, led the sheriff on a wild chase halfway to Montana before doubling back. Pride colored his voice. She said you found something at the bank. Emily nodded, retrieving the notes from her hidden pocket. Randall's secret ledger. He's been systematically forcing people off their land, calling in loans early, manipulating property boundaries. She hesitated. And there's more. Entries showing payments to someone named Jenkins. Randall's half-brother Jackson finished grimly. Thomas Eaton's illegitimate son from an affair with a saloon girl 20 years ago. Town drunk with a mean streak. The payment was made the day your father died. Emily confirmed. Enough money to disappear permanently. Jackson absorbed this, his jaw tightening. So Randall hired his own half-brother to kill their father, then framed me for it to get my land. The perfect solution to multiple problems, Emily agreed. remove his father's restraining influence, eliminate you as competition for water rights, and ensure Jenkins disappeared with enough money to never return. Did you get proof? Something tangible we can take to the marshal? Emily's smile was triumphant, despite her exhaustion. Better. I planted the letter Catherine gave me, the one proving Randall was embezzling inside his secret ledger. When the territorial marshal raids the bank, they'll find both. Jackson stared at her with dawning amazement. You hid evidence inside the evidence? A letter in a book on a shelf is easy to overlook, Emily explained with teacher's logic. A letter found inside an already incriminating document is impossible to ignore. For a moment, Jackson seemed speechless. Then he laughed, a sound of genuine joy that echoed off the cave walls. Emily Hargrove, you are a marvel. His hands framed her face with unexpected tenderness, and Emily found herself leaning into his touch, the barriers of propriety dissolving in the wake of all they'd experienced together. I didn't dare hope, he murmured, when I sent that advertisement east, that I would find not just a wife, but a partner. Someone with the courage to stand beside me, fight beside me. I came seeking a fresh start, Emily confessed. Freedom from Boston's stifling expectations. I never imagined finding someone worth fighting for. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, despite the intensity of their shared ordeal. Their second was not. When they finally parted, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. Catherine sent telegrams from Cottonwood Springs. The territorial marshal should arrive by tomorrow evening. What do we do until then? His smile held equal parts exhaustion and determination. We stay alive, and then we build that future. I promised you, a proper home at Silver Creek, children someday, apple trees that bloom each spring, and the school, Emily reminded him. You promised me students to teach. I'll build you a schoolhouse with my own hands, he vowed. Outside, the eastern sky was lightening, painting the distant mountains in shades of rose and gold, the first of many sunrises they would share on the frontier that had brought them together. 2 days later, Emily stood on the boardwalk outside the Clearwater Sheriff's office, watching as Randall Eaton, manacled and seething, was escorted into a prison wagon bound for Cheyenne. Behind her, Jackson and Catherine spoke quietly with Marshal Davies, whose timely arrival with a contingent of deputies had brought swift justice to the small town. The evidence Emily had discovered, combined with a signed confession from Jenkins, found drunk and repentant in a Denver saloon, had been enough to clear Jackson's name and indict Randall for both embezzlement and conspiracy to murder. Miss Hargrove, Sheriff Wallace approached, hat in hand, his weathered face uncomfortable with apology. I want you to know, I never would have fired on a lady, had I known the truth of things. Emily nodded graciously, though the memory of bullets splintering wood near her head remained vivid. You were doing your duty as you understood it, Sheriff. Still, he twisted his hat brim awkwardly. Ain't right, what Eaton tried to do to Blackwood's land. Man's water rights are sacred out here. Yes, Emily agreed, her gaze drifting to where Jackson stood in animated conversation with the marshal. I'm beginning to understand many things about the West. The sheriff followed her gaze, a knowing smile creasing his leathery face. Understand you'll be staying on then. Town could use a proper school teacher. If Mr. Blackwood still wishes it. Emily felt a blush warm her cheeks. Ma'am, if you'll forgive my plain-spokenness, that man's been rebuilding that cabin and adding rooms since dawn yesterday. Sheriff Wallace chuckled. I believe his wishes are quite clear. Indeed, Jackson had insisted on a proper courtship despite their already extraordinary bond, declaring that Emily deserved to be wooed properly, not rushed into marriage after trauma and danger. Marshal Davies concluded his business, mounting his horse with a final word to Jackson. The territorial court will want your testimony next month, Blackwood. Yours too, Miss Hargrove. But Eaton's fate is sealed. As the lawmen departed with their prisoner, Catherine approached, linking her arm through Emily's. Well, Eastern woman, have we frightened you back to Boston yet? Emily laughed, the sound free and unrestrained. On the contrary, Miss Blackwood, I find I've developed quite a taste for Western adventure. Good. Catherine's smile was warm. Because my brother is lost without you, though his stubborn pride would never let him admit it so plainly. As if summoned by their discussion, Jackson joined them, his expression lighter than Emily had yet seen it, unburdened by the shadow of false accusation.
Ladies.
He offered an arm to each of them. I believe Miller's store just received a shipment of sugar and flour. Perhaps we should replenish the pantry before returning to Silver Creek. The three walked together down Clearwater's main street, drawing curious glances from townspeople, still processing the morning's dramatic events. At the general store, Sarah Miller greeted them with unrestrained delight. "You're the talk of the territory," she exclaimed, ushering them inside. The Boston school teacher who outsmarted Randall Eaton and saved Blackwood Ranch. Hardly that dramatic, Emily demurred, though she couldn't help but contrast this moment with her arrival just days earlier. How foreign and frightening this place had seemed then. As Catherine and Sarah discussed supplies, Jackson drew Emily toward the store's small window, their reflection ghostly against the bright day outside. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about timing." Emily raised an eyebrow.
Ooh.
"Perhaps a lengthy courtship isn't necessary after all." His voice held a question beneath the statement. When two people have faced death together and come through it side by side, well, some might say they already know the measure of each other better than most couples who've courted for years. Emily's heart quickened. Some might indeed say that. "The circuit preacher comes through next Sunday." Jackson's fingers brushed hers, the touch sending warmth up her arm. "If you felt ready."
Yes.
Emily said simply, her smile answering all his unspoken questions. "Though I insist on a proper wedding dress." Catherine mentioned a seamstress in town. Relief and joy transformed his face. "Anything you wish." "I meant what I said, Emily. I'll spend my life building whatever future you desire here." "I desire us," she answered, the certainty in her voice surprising even herself. "Everything else we'll build together, day by day." Behind them, Catherine cleared her throat pointedly. "If you two are finished making plans, there's a wagon to load before sundown." The three left the store laden with supplies, stepping into the golden afternoon light of a Wyoming autumn. Emily paused on the boardwalk, taking in the scene that would become her home. The distant mountains, the vast sky, the rough-hewn town with its promise of civilization taking root. Boston, with its brick and cobblestone, its rigid society and stifling expectations, seemed a lifetime away. Here on this frontier, she had found not just freedom but purpose, not just a husband but a partner. As Jackson helped her into the wagon, his hand lingered on hers, a silent promise of all that lay ahead, challenges and joys, hardships and triumphs, faced together on the land they had fought to keep. Silver Creek awaited, and with it, the future they would write together. The schoolhouse bell rang across the valley, its clear tone carrying on the spring breeze. Inside, Emily Blackwood adjusted the slate board one final time before her students arrived. 14 children, ranging from 6 to 16, offspring of ranchers and shopkeepers, miners and blacksmiths, all hungry for the education she had brought to Silver Creek. Through the open window, she could see the town that had sprung up around Jackson's original claim. A proper general store now, a smithy, even a small church where she and Jackson had exchanged vows the previous autumn. The entire valley in attendance. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. Jackson rode toward the schoolhouse, straight-backed and strong astride his copper bay. No longer the fugitive she had first encountered, he had become a respected voice in territorial affairs. His water management skills sought by neighboring ranches. He dismounted with easy grace, tipping his hat as he entered the one-room schoolhouse. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Blackwood." Emily couldn't help the smile that still came whenever she saw him. "To what do I owe this midday visit?" "Thought you might like to know," he began, but was interrupted by Catherine's arrival, her horse galloping at full speed. "It's happening," she called, reining to a stop before the schoolhouse steps. "Emily, it's time." Understanding dawned. Emily hastily gathered her shawl. "The Miller's baby." Catherine nodded, breathless with excitement. "Sarah's asking for you. Says she won't bring this child into the world without the woman who helped save the valley." Since clearing Jackson's name, Emily had discovered an unexpected talent for midwifery, her calm demeanor and practical nature proving invaluable during the frontier's frequent medical emergencies. "Children will be arriving any minute." Emily glanced worriedly at the schoolhouse. "I'll handle it," Jackson assured her. Might do these young ones good to learn some practical ranching mathematics for a change. Emily laughed, knowing his lesson would likely involve more stories than sums. Very well, Professor Blackwood. Mind they complete their geography exercise before dismissal. He caught her hand as she moved past, pulling her into a brief but tender kiss. Still glad you came, West Boston. The question had become a familiar tease between them. Every day, she answered truthfully, the words a renewal of the vows they had exchanged. Every single day. Hours later, as twilight painted the mountains purple and gold, Emily sat on the porch of the expanded cabin at Silver Creek, a steaming cup of coffee warming her hands. The Millers had welcomed a healthy daughter, another life beginning in this place of new beginnings. Jackson joined her, settling into the adjoining chair they had placed to watch the sunset together each evening, a simple ritual that had come to define their marriage. Sarah asked what they should name the baby. Emily said, leaning her head against his shoulder, I suggested Hope. Jackson's arm encircled her, drawing her closer. Fitting. Nearby, Catherine's voice carried from the barn where she sang while completing evening chores, the silver in her hair catching the last light of day. Inside their home, lamps glowed against the coming darkness, illuminating shelves of books, hand-sewn curtains, and the 100 small touches that had transformed a bachelor's cabin into a family home. I received a letter from Margaret today, Emily mentioned, speaking of the sister who had warned her against this journey. She's considering a visit this summer. I believe she's curious about the life we've built here. Think she'll approve. Jackson's voice held amusement. Emily laughed softly. Hardly, but she might understand. Finally, understand the choice to leave comfort for challenge, to trade certainty for possibility, to risk everything for love not yet discovered. The first stars appeared overhead, brilliant in the vast Wyoming sky. Below the creek that had started everything, the water rights worth killing for, worth fighting for, reflected their light, silver ribbons twisting toward distant horizons. Do you ever think about how differently things might have gone? Emily asked, her voice thoughtful. If Eaton had succeeded, if we hadn't found the evidence. Jackson was silent a moment, considering. Sometimes. But then I remember something my father told me before he died. He said the measure of a life isn't in what challenges come your way, but in who stands beside you when they do. Emily turned in his arms, finding his gaze in the gathering dusk. I would stand beside you through anything. I know. His smile held the certainty of a man who had found his true north. That's the miracle of it all. Above them, the stars multiplied as darkness claimed the valley, each point of light a promise kept. A future waiting to unfold across the vast untamed landscape they now called home. The ending. Asterisk. Dear viewer, thank you for watching this epic Wild West romance. If you enjoyed this tale of love that transcends boundaries and the courage to fight for what's right, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more stories like this. Every subscription helps us bring more historical romances to life on this channel. Asterisk. Remember, true love isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's discovered in the willingness to stand together through life's greatest challenges. Until next time, keep believing in love's transformative power.